Hello, kia ora, g'day. I'm Philip Duncan from Weather Watch TV on YouTube with your Australia-only forecast through until the start of next week. Running a day late this week, apologies for that. Let's get into the forecast. So we've got a pretty even setup at the moment. High pressure to the south of Australia, low pressure to the north, and that basically defines, in a very simple way, the forecast for the next week ahead. You're seeing a lot of high pressure staying to the south, keeping southern areas drier and northern areas wetter because of the low pressure zones. And you've got easterly winds in the middle here, snaking across Australia, hot and dry and lifting up the fire risks as it does so. So let's get further into the forecast. Here is the 7-day departure from normal. Blue leans wetter than average for this time of the year. White is normal rainfall for the end of March. And the red shaded areas show drier. So we're seeing the blue up here, the wetter than usual area is quite large around Australia at the moment. That is pushing into Queensland and some parts of New South Wales, Northern Territory and the Kimberley. All of those areas seeing some decent rain coming up. There's also the possibility, it's not locked in, but the possibility still of this tropical cyclone in Western Australia. There's a wee bit of rain relief further to the south around Victoria, but again, hit and miss. South Australia is looking the driest, and even Western Australia seeing some wet weather bubbling up over the next week ahead. So there is variety, but many places are leaning dry, and Tasmania, haven't been talking much about you lately because there hasn't been very much happening, still looking fairly settled and dry thanks to the high pressure zone, only a couple of showers for Tassie at the moment. So let's have a look at the forecast. Here we are on Wednesday. Look at the tropical lows. So we've got a couple of lows off here to the northwest. One of those could potentially turn into a cyclone, possibly the one to the west there, and likely to drift further away from Australia. There's more low pressure though, all the way from Darwin to Broome. And we've been seeing in the computer modelling for days now, weeks even really, a week or so, a number of lows up here. And some of those could form into a cyclone, others of them sort of steal energy from each other, as we saw a couple of months ago happening out here in the Pacific Ocean. So these are worth keeping an eye on. And notice over around the Queensland area, there's a big sunken area of low pressure pulling down all the monsoon. The rain is coming in properly now for Queensland. So some decent downpours right through the spine, through the central part of the Queensland area. You're talking here up to 100 millimetres, maybe even more, to the west of Charleville as that system pushes down. And coastal showers, the usual kind of stuff, all the way down to about sort of Grafton area, maybe as far south as Port Macquarie. Otherwise, mostly dry further southwards. You've got those windy, warmer easterlies blowing from Victoria across to South Australia and across to Western Australia. So those areas still staying dry and hot. Around Tasmania, not a lot going on, just a couple of showers around in the mix. Otherwise, it's still dry for the very south there, and it stays that way on Thursday as once again Tasmania, Bass Strait gets a high pressure zone moving across you. So we've got a couple of showers around, mostly coastal showers along here, nothing too serious. Once you get into the Queensland area though, you got that low pressure zone further out towards the Northern Territory, but all that tropical moisture coming down Townsville to about Rockhampton. That's the main sort of area of that rain. And then once you get over the main divide and pushing inland to the outback, you're seeing those big severe thunderstorms, very heavy rain. So keep an eye on the warnings from the Bureau of Meteorology around Queensland this week. Not to forget the Northern Territory and Kimberley as well, where we're seeing a lot of energy up here. Darwin's going to see a few thunderstorms, some severe this week, so both the top end, Katherine regions getting that. Now we've got these two lows. The one further to the west may well be a tropical cyclone, and the one just to the northwest of Broome may also become a tropical cyclone. Now it's not 100% locked in. This is still, we talked about this last week, and it was just the same. Nothing has really changed. We've got all this low pressure in the tropics, and you start to see a low spinning up, but the one nearby could start to take its energy, and so it just produces rain and thunderstorms. You don't necessarily get a tropical cyclone forming out of it, but this is a very interesting map. A lot of energy around the top half of Australia. Obviously Queensland in the firing line on Friday for most of that heavy rain, severe thunderstorms in there. Watch for damage and potential localised flash flooding. You're seeing some very heavy rain from Mackay well inland to about Charleville in that line, northeasterly line, some big severe thunderstorms in there and east of Mount Isa. Also up in the very top end, north of Katherine, you're seeing some severe thunderstorms going into the end of the week, and once more coming into the Kimberley area, you've got that low offshore still bubbling around. Further inland areas, also seeing severe thunderstorms and thunderstorms popping up into South Australia. That will come down into some of the more populated areas, but obviously not coming down into Adelaide itself, just like Melbourne, just like Hobart, just like Perth. All of you are dry. Sydney does have a few showers in there on Friday, east to northeasterly winds blowing in. Now by Saturday, Sydney's got a chance of some heavy rain, some thunderstorms as well, severe thunderstorms possible as all of this system sort of tracks eastwards. Low pressure around Queensland, up around Rockhampton. That's that main Queensland low pressure zone. So that's moving along out to the sea. Big high pressure belt parked right over the top of New Zealand. That happens over the weekend. That placement encourages east to northeasterly winds past Norfolk Island, Lord Howe Island. But once you come into the mainland, rain clouds really set in, especially along the divide. So you're going to be seeing heavy falls, severe thunderstorms, Sydney northwards and inland areas of New South Wales and Queensland here on Saturday. Meanwhile, severe thunderstorms to the north around the Northern Territory, around Kimberley. Further south though, hit and miss showers for South Australia and Victoria and for Tasmania, mostly dry, but you do start to see some showers here in the southwest, Kalgoorlie southwestwards. You've got some showers in the mix there on the top of the high pressure belt south of Aussie. But we've also got the low here, the low pressure zone off from the coast of Broome. Let's have a closer look at that one, because as we go into Sunday, it doesn't move very much, and this has been consistent in the modelling, that this low pressure zone could just sort of sit around offshore here and go back the way it came. It might even sort of start to move in one direction, stop, go backwards, because of the big guiding high pressure zone south of Australia. So this low is at this stage looking to be a cyclone, tropical cyclone going into the weekend. But whether or not it forms exactly as it shows you here, or further to the north or west, and there's still the possibility that another low further out around tropical parts of Queensland or the Northern Territory could form and drag some of that energy away and lower the wind chances. So you can still have a low with all the rain, but the winds aren't there to make it a cyclone. But here on Sunday, I'll go back to the cyclone in a second, but here on Sunday you see severe thunderstorms all across the tropical northern parts of Australia, and we're also seeing this wet northeasterly from that leftover low pressure zone around Brisbane now, driving in some heavy rain, Brisbane southwards, mostly coastal, and if you look closer, most of that rain is actually offshore, it's not actually inland. So on the land itself, bit borderline as we go through into Sunday on that one, and a windy east to southeasterly coming into Bass Strait, driving in some rain to the coastal parts of Victoria in the south here, and showers, some of them heavy, coming into South Australia and over to Western Australia. That's that area on the departure from normal that looked a little bit wetter than usual. But let's now jump back over here to the cyclone. Here's how it looks close up. It looks a lot more dramatic when you zoom into it. And so this is what we saw last week, no different. The only difference is it's perhaps a little bit further. Last week it was a little bit further down towards Port Hedland. This is where it is now. Worth noting, over the weekend when I was monitoring this, at one point over the weekend, it didn't show any low pressure here at all. Then the next day it updated it, the modelling had put it back here again. Why did it do that? Because it was seeing low pressure further off to the northeast, off towards the Northern Territory, and that sort of stole the energy. So that means as a weather forecaster, I'm not confident enough yet to say this is definitely happening, but to be seeing this again this week, and we already talked about it last week, certainly some confidence in the computer modelling. If this occurs, that would be a very serious cyclone, possibly Category 5, the highest on the level. Everyone from Broome down to Port Hedland should be aware of this, but to be honest with you, everyone from Darwin to Port Hedland should be monitoring this, because we're not 100% sure where that low will actually end up forming and tracking because of the big high pressure zone to the south that breathes like up and down as it moves along from west to east. So there is a chance by the start of next week, you've got an ex-cyclone inland across the deserts of Western Australia, plenty of severe thunderstorms right across the Northern Territory and coming in to parts of South Australia. But otherwise, high pressure in charge here, so just coastal showers won't add up to much. Best chances over here in the southeastern corner of Victoria, even Tasmania staying mostly dry. Coastal parts of New South Wales and a large portion of Queensland has the chance of some showers, but whether or not they are going to do a lot, doesn't look like it at this stage for the most part, but there could be some severe thunderstorms in the mix here. You always get some that could bubble up here and there. So that is the forecast for the next week ahead. I've just got one more map. Here is the rainfall to make sense of it. So the areas with the purple and the blues, that's the part here on the scale, 100 to 300 millimetres. You are seeing at least 1 to 200 millimetres through a big portion of Queensland, and then you've got the chance of that tropical cyclone. That isn't locked in, but you can certainly see that one area that is showing up some heavy rain, not to mention the top end, seeing some severe thunderstorms as the monsoon finally turns up. Further to the east of Melbourne, a good chance of getting some rain in there, but once more, the big dry belt goes from Melbourne to Adelaide and over to Perth. That's the driest area, and once more, obviously, the very western, central part of Western Australia, not too abnormal there. Out in the Tasman, Norfolk Island and Lord Howe Island also looking fairly dry. You might get 10, 15 millimetres if you're lucky. That is all from me for today, backing in just 2 days, so we can update you on the tropical cyclone status, the severe thunderstorm status, who's got rain, who doesn't, all of that coming up on Thursday. Have a good rest of your week ahead.